Hello, everybody. Melissa Lambert here with Fostering Quality Schools, and I have my wonderful colleague, Nikki Sabatier, and I'd like to introduce you. If you could talk about who you are, your role, and I'll have a few more questions for you.
So my name is Nikki. I am fortunate enough to be a middle school principal in Northern California. I have a 7th and 8th grade students right now. I've been there for the past 2 years. And yeah, we're looking forward to next year. So.
Wonderful. So what's the impact of COVID been, the COVID closure specifically, remote learning? What's that been like for you as a leader at your school?
So like leaders in pretty much every other school district, we didn't have a lot of time to figure out what we were going to do. You know, we found out from our Office of Education Sunday that we weren't coming back to school on Monday. So it was a very quick turnaround for what our plan was. So we collaborated as a team on Sunday night and decided that we were going to try and put together the best quality distance education that we could. We decided, it's important to say that I'm at a middle school level because I think it looks different if you're an elementary school principal, a middle school principal, or a high school principal, because those middle school kids are a little bit more tech savvy and a little bit more independent than some of the younger students that are served. So we decided that we were going to go all digital. So we made a plan that we needed to reach out to our students and see who had access to internet, who needed devices at home, who needed hotspots to be able to access, and who needed both. So most of our teachers already had Google Classroom when this started. So the few that didn't had to create a Google Classroom, and that was definitely a tough turnaround to learn that in one day and set it up. So we really relied on each other at the school to figure out how to do that and to collaborate around that. Once you understand it, it's relatively easy, but when you've never done it before, it's daunting. So we decided that we were going to be all digital, that everybody would have a Google Classroom, and that was our jumping off point. Our team wanted to invite everybody to the Google Classrooms that they hadn't been in yet. And right away, we had a super successful rate. Most of our students logged on within 24 hours. Once we got the word out, through email or through a daily bulletin that we were doing it all digitally, most students logged on. There were maybe, I don't know, a dozen students who hadn't logged on. So that made it easy for us because then we had contact with our students. We could say, what do you need? How is it going for you? How can we support you in this process? So we let it kind of naturally happen for the first week just to see who was logging on, who had access. And then at the end of the week, we called every single one of our students who hadn't logged on and talked to them and talked to their families and said, what do you guys need? How can we support you? So we found out that a handful of students needed access to the internet and a handful of students needed devices, and some of them both. So that's what we did. It wasn't as easy as just handing out Chromebooks to kids. We actually didn't have a district policy that said, here's the checkout procedures. That's hadn't been what we were doing. We had Chrome carts in classrooms, but we weren't checking them out to kids. So that was a process to, create that policy before we started handing out Chromebooks as well. But I would say about week 2, we then were in contact with every single one of our students one way or another and got devices to all of our students. It did take us a few weeks to get hotspots out to our students, the process of ordering them, accessing them, and then delivering them. But definitely by week 3, all of our students had access and were online. So that was amazing. And the teachers were collaborative and they were on it. They were on their classrooms. They were talking to kids. They were holding live Google Meet sessions to help them with their work and walk them through it. So I was super proud of our teachers. They just really pulled together and did what they had to do to educate kids. And it was super exciting to see it happen.
That is so fantastic. Such positive news, particularly around being able to capture who was logging on and who wasn't, and then have a plan for that. Has this experience, or your reflection on this experience, really put forth for your strategy for reopening for next year?
Reopening next year is definitely the question that looms out there. And I think it's the question on everybody's mind: parents, students, staff, leaders in our community. You know, it's interesting. I want to say that when we first started the distance learning, and we started to have the Google Meets with students, it was interesting because right away we realized that it wasn't so much about academics to our middle school students, it was social emotional to our middle school students. This idea of not going to school and not seeing your teachers that you had been with for the first, 3/4 of the year, not having access to your friends to talk. Middle school is an age that is very social emotional. And when we started to talk to them online, we realized that yes, they were there to talk about the academics and they were there to get help on what they needed. But when that was done, they just wanted to talk. They wanted to show you their cat, they wanted to talk about what it's like at home for them and what it's like doing work in a different situation than other students have. So it was interesting. We realized right away that this social emotional piece was almost more important than the academic piece to these students. And that was tough because we always have a level of social emotional connection in the classroom, but it was different with distance learning. So something that we did to help with that is we made a schedule for our teachers so that every day of the week, Monday through Friday, at least one of the 6 teachers that we have core teachers for academics, and they rotate through the classes, one English teacher, one math teacher, like that. And so every day of the week, we had a Google Hangout where they can go on and they can touch base somehow. And that really supported them social emotionally. So moving into next year, that is something that I think is really important. Some of these students some students won't be able to come back. Some of them can't come back. Some of them won't come back. Some families don't want to send them back. But I think a lot of our student population, they do want to come back to school. So I think that, and we want to be able to support them socially, emotionally, and academically in both of those settings. So moving into next year, I think that we have to have some sort of component of distance learning. I think it needs to be a hybrid model. I don't know specifically what that looks like as far as a master schedule goes for our school, but we need to be able to support them on both platforms, both in person and distance. So we're really looking at what we can do to set it up, because we need our teachers to run that concurrently. And so a question that is really important for us to answer is, how many students are we going to have in person and how many are going to want to be distant? And I think that we don't know that until the first day of school. We can put out surveys and we can put out polls, but I think that you have to look at your sample that you're putting out. If you're only putting it out on social media, the people who answer that survey are not necessarily the people who have that immediate access. So I think that is a little bit of our barrier right now, is our data and looking at who is going to come and who isn't. So we just have to do our best to contact all of the families and really try and get that most accurate information. But I think no matter what we do, we're not going to know until we open school and the first day comes. So after that, we're just going to have to set it up the best we can, have a model that is both to support the few families that we know right now are going to do distance learning. How do we support them on the first day of school, and then the students that are there in person? And so I think maybe having a hybrid or making a schedule where we stagger preps for teachers to be able to have a distance learning period in their day if it's a few kids, or having multiple distance learning periods in their day if it's a lot of kids. We just don't know that information now, but I think just setting it up so that we're flexible within the school system to say, okay, we had a lot more students on distance learning than we thought. This is how we're going to modify to make that work. Or we only have 15 kids on distance learning. It looks like we need to support our in-person students learning, and have some setup time for our staff to be able to support that small group of kids who are doing distance learning. So maybe live streaming some of the classes might be a possibility. giving them a period where they can exclusively be with the students online. That might be a way to do it. Or making some of those small group meetings, you know, after school, if that's what the community needs from us, that might be a way we have to do it too. So there's so many different possibilities, and it's definitely going to take data and seeing what's happening in collaboration with our staff and just doing what educators do best, which is being flexible to the situation.
So wonderful. It's so wonderful to hear your equitable stance and take on this, that you're really working hard to reach all of your families and your student populations. It's so refreshing and wonderful to hear. And actually, you came up with some really great and novel ideas. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. Thank you for being a wonderful leader and really bringing the field forward.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.